Hello and welcome back to Tengu Simulations. Today we're going to explain what the perfect straight shot is and how to set up for it. What is the straight shot and why is it perfect? This method is called straight shot because you're shooting straight with 0 degrees of deflection. So the torpedo exits the tube and just carves through the sea straight ahead. Why is it considered perfect? There's no such thing as a perfect shot, just the fact that before 1942 most of the torpedoes were duds means that there already is a great chance the shot will be wasted. However, if we take dud probability out of the equation, a straight shot at a short range minimizes the impact of data calculation errors to a degree that may be defined as negligible. Additionally, the impact pistol requires an angle that's as close to a 90-degree angle of impact to arm, otherwise you risk having the torpedo glance off harmlessly. Therefore, the straight shot is as close to being perfect as you can get. Before I move into the demonstration section, I assume you already are familiar with my data gathering methods. If you aren't, this is your chance to back out of the video and learn them. Finally, to position yourself ahead of the target as the method demands, you must know the target's heading. So once again, go watch the appropriate video if you haven't already. Alright, so let's pick a target. I'm going to use this medium cargo ship right here. So let's go ahead and recognize it on the manual to get the real data.
Kontakt, Frachter, kommt näher auf 4-2, mittlere Entfernung.
Medium cargo, there we are. And one thing you guys should know is I went ahead and re-enabled the contact updates just so that it is a little bit easier for you guys to understand what's going on. In my career, I would play hardcore without contact updates, but for the demonstration of the straight shot, I believe it's a lot more advantageous to try and help you out a little bit with the visualization of everything. So, alright, this is our target, okay? This is the medium cargo. We want to do a few things, the most important of which is to calculate his heading. Because we're doing contact updates enabled, we may as well use the contact update method. If you guys recall from my video, oops, excuse me, that was wrong. So, put it in the middle of the target, draw a line and try to find sort of where the target is sailing towards. Anyhow, let's assume that this guy is doing 69, so we'll set up for a heading of 69 where the time comes. Before we do, we need to find out his speed. Let's use the 315 method. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a mark just ahead of his bow. That will give me enough time to then go and activate my clock. And we are going to wait exactly 3 minutes and 15 seconds. So I'm getting ready to put another mark. There we are. Let's calculate the distance between the two marks. That's 0.2. This means that the target is doing 2 knots. So what I'm going to do is turn off my TDC, input 2 knots on the speed dial, and that's about it. Now one thing we can do as well is input the angle on bow. Angle on bow is something that you can always change, you can always correct, so don't be afraid of it. Don't think that, oh no, I need to know the exact angle on bow this ship is doing right now, because if I don't, I'll fail to hit him. Don't worry about that. When we actually set up a parallel course and we start overtaking the target, setting up the angle on bow is going to be a lot easier than it is right now. But if you want to, you can set the angle on bow right now. So, the next step, of course, is to set a parallel course and overtake the target. So, as I said, something like 69 degrees. Now, keep in mind, guys, that in the straight shot, we want to get close to the target. Ideally, we want to be somewhere between 400 and 900 meters. So right now, if you look at the range, it's a bit too far. It's like 1.5 kilometers away. This is not a good shot. We will need to get closer than that, but right now we don't need to get closer to him. We will get closer to him when we turn into his track. Like if we suppose this is his track, we will turn into his track, and that's how we are going to close the range. Now, for example, right now we know that the angle on bow is almost a perfect 90 degrees starboard. The TDC, for some reason, doesn't seem to agree with this hypothesis. As you can see, it says that this is 20 degrees angle on bow starboard. Obviously incorrect, so feel free to correct it. And as always, just before the actual shot, we are once again going to correct any changes in speed or any changes in angle on bow. So right now, what's my heading? Right now my heading is 625. 90 degrees left is 335 from what I can see. So let's turn 335. This looks to me something like possibly 40 degrees. I think so. And let's grab the ranging tool. 800 meters, that's good enough. Stop the engines. And what happens right now is we basically lie in wait until this target crosses our 0 degrees. And I want you guys to check out something else as well. Remember what I've told you about the TDC. Remember how I've told you that if the target doesn't change his heading or his speed, the TDC will be able to automatically calculate where the target will be and with what angle on bow number. So look at that. Right now we estimated that the target is something like 40 degrees angle on bow starboard. Check out what happens when I take my periscope and I move it to the 0 bearing. Do you see that? The angle on bow changed. Now the computer thinks that at this point the target will be 100 degrees angle on bow starboard. Now this may be correct, it might be incorrect. It doesn't really matter because once the target gets near us, we're going to update the angle on bow once again, and so by the time the target is ahead of us, we're going to have a perfectly correct angle on bow calculation. At this point, what I would personally do is I would overhaul target's speed, so I would use the centerline method or any other method really to confirm his speed once again. And obviously, as the angle on bow changes, I may want to change the angle on bow to create a more accurate solution. Let's go over our torpedo settings a little bit because this is actually something quite useful. I've already done a video covering torpedo settings, and pretty much what I told you guys is that use your torpedoes as you like. Do you like impact pistol? Use impact pistol. Do you like magnetic pistol? Use magnetic pistol. You know, do you like various different speeds? Do you like various different salvo settings? You know, it's mostly a personal preference. However, if you're starting a career in the early period of the war, before 1942, the magnetic pistol was pretty much useless. So I highly recommend you use impacts instead to eliminate a lot of those dart torpedoes, and this is what I'm going to do myself. So I'm going to open tube 1, and I'm going to open tube 2 as well. Opening your tubes ahead of time is pretty important because if you aim at your target, say the target is at a 0 bearing, and I aim at him and I press the fire button, I'm actually wasting a few seconds to open the tubes and fill them with water and stuff. You know, for a slow-moving target such as the medium cargo, doesn't really matter. But with a faster target, like for example the tanker that was going, I think, something like 7 or 8 knots, it will actually make a difference. Okay, so it's pretty important that you open your tubes ahead of time. In terms of torpedo settings, as I said, I'm going to be using impact pistols with the fastest setting. Alright. I'm not going to use the salvo, I'm just going to aim the torpedoes manually by myself. And what about the depth? Well, the target's draft, as you guys can see, is 9 meters. However, if we set the impact pistol to such a high draft setting, there's a good chance they're going to miss. What we quite possibly want to do is program our torpedoes to hit somewhere around the 3 meters of depth. I'd say this is kinda ideal for the impact pistol. If you guys have a better setting than me, let me know. And another thing that I forgot to mention is actually the gyro angle. I told you guys how in the 0 degrees bearing the torpedo will just come straight out of the tube and rush forwards. This is also reflected by the gyro angle. Now, as you can see, the gyro angle at the 0 degree bearing is not 0, 0, 0. This means that there is just a little bit of an error in our calculations, maybe because of the angle on bow. So we'll see if that changes by the time we finally release the shot. However, even 002 gyro angle is completely acceptable. In fact, I would probably even, take a shot with 30 degrees of gyro angle, even 40 degrees of gyro angle. Anything more than that, and you really risk running into problems, just premature detonations and depth keeping issues, and so on and so on. Alright, the target is almost at the 0 degrees bearing. Angle on bow is almost 90 degrees, so let's pull it backwards a little bit. Let's do 75. How about 75? Then at the 0 bearing, it shows an almost perfect 90 degrees angle on bow. So that's really damn good. Now, if your calculations are correct, guys, and you shoot at your target, the torpedo should impact exactly where you're aiming it. So if I aim, for example, for the first mast, this is where the torpedo should go. So what I'm going to do probably is try to hit this mast right here, and then try to go for the center line of the ship, let's say. In real conditions, this last piece of weighting would be nerve-wracking. It really would be, but that's one of the main reasons why we play Silent Hunter. The thrill of the hunt. So. Torpedo 1 fire. Torpedo 2 fire. So, it turns out that my calculations weren't really all that correct. What I think happened is that the target was moving at more than 2 knots speed, so quite possibly 3 knots, perhaps. This of course means that by the time the torpedoes arrived where they should arrive, the target has moved forwards. So as you can see, instead of hitting the first mast and then the center line, I hit the third mast and the rear mast. So that's what happened, I think. I think that the target was moving more than 2 knots. And of course, as I told you, in far ranges, let's say we were attacking at 1 kilometer, okay? Let's say we were attacking, something like 1 kilometer. Because of the greater distance that the torpedoes have to travel, the target's change in speed, so 3 knots instead of 2, would translate to a much bigger sort of gap that is created, and so my torpedoes would most likely miss. But with the straight shot method, even if we did fuck up the speed a little bit, it didn't really matter in the end. And even if the speed changed by quite a lot, so say for example that the target wasn't doing 3 knots but he was doing 4 or 5 knots, chances are that at least one torpedo would still hit. So the first torpedo, probably it would strike his rear end, and the second torpedo would miss. But that's perfectly acceptable. Now, how about we use another tube to finish this poor fella off? So, angle bow seems about fine. I'm pretty sure he's dead in the water, so I'm not going to do any leading with the speed. Angle bow, yeah, it seems about fine, yeah. So yeah, let's use torpedo 3, torpedo tube 3, and fire away.
Rohr 3, los! Aal ist im Wasser!
Thank you very much for watching, and I hope this tutorial will prove useful to you guys. Thank you for signing out. Good hunting.